So when I was 15, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. He lived on for another 3 months and then he passed away. Now, when speaking to the doctors, it became apparent that if he had had access to the most innovative therapies that were available, he could have lived for at least another 12 months. Now, I'm most certain that most of you had had similar experiences, maybe with family members or friends, and that is a real problem in this world. I see there's a lot of Russian interest here, so I picked a good example to really visualize what kind of problem we're running in the healthcare world. In Russia, there has been great spend on healthcare treatments. 12.6 billion was spent on prescription drugs in 2017, and up to 50% cuts were happening in regions because of the high costs of treatments. Now, two numbers that are very scary, and not just in Russia, this is happening throughout the world, because healthcare expenditure is unsustainable due to aging population, increasing prevalence of chronic disease, and rising treatment costs. 92% are not covered for outpatient treatment, which means that if you're not sleeping over or if you're not in the hospital for more than a day, you have to pay that coverage by yourself. That's very scary. And also what's scary is typically you pay 3 to 4 times, or Russia, insurances, payers pay 3 to 4 times the prices of medication as to reference countries, such as Greece or the UK. Now, what does that all mean? What does that lead to? Well, limited to no access to drugs for patients. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem that Digipharm wants to solve. There's a concept which addresses the challenge in healthcare and the challenge of unsustainable expenditure in healthcare: value-based pricing. Value-based pricing can be explained by looking at the value that it provides for the patient. So instead of paying for the volume of the treatment that you get, you are paying for the value that it can provide. And that value is mostly defined in the benefit or the outcome for the patient. Just to give you an example, instead of just getting a treatment and paying for it, let's say 50 milligram or 100 milligram, you actually only pay more when it works, and you pay less when it doesn't work. So let's say life extension. If you live up to 3 months or 6 months, you'd pay a certain price. But if you live longer, let's say for 6 months to 9 months, you'd pay another price. So the price varies with this concept. The world is moving on. Healthcare systems, pharma companies, providers, insurances, they all realize that there's a problem going on. But also here, there's one big problem. And this is, how do we know what kind of data to collect, and how do we collect this data? It takes currently a lot of administrative efforts to collect this outcome data to actually define the value-based price. And also, the infrastructural limitations prohibit right now the implementation of large-scale value-based pricing. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is where Digipharm plays its biggest role. We will be able to implement value-based pricing using the blockchain. We will bring value-based pricing to life using the blockchain. We will use smart contract technology, and there's a very specific purpose to that. Because when dealing with sensitive data, such as health data, you need to make sure that it's secure and it's also accessible by the right parties. And this is where the blockchain can help. It's about decentralization, it's about permissions, and it's about privacy. And all of these factors are taken into account in our solutions. This is our reimbursed solution that will enable value-based pricing. Now, one exciting point about this is the data. With this data, we will be able to create insights. Insights is the first real-world evidence platform that can be accessed in real time by all sorts of different parties. Two really exciting things about this platform is, number one, with this platform and using the blockchain, we can actually reward the patients for delivering or sharing their data. This has never been done in the world before. Number two, shortly I mentioned, the real-time access. Imagine you're with a doctor and he has to decide what kind of treatment suits you best. He can go back to this database and search for similar cases and make really well-informed healthcare decisions anywhere in the world. What are the benefits? I think here again, the most important thing is access. We saw it in the Russian example before, right? They have high mortality rates, almost double as to in the US and the UK. Why? Because they do not get the access that they need. With this model, spreading the risk of treatments not working, the access will increase. The payers are interested because they're actually only going to pay for the treatment that works. Or let me say differently, they will pay less for the treatment that doesn't work. Let me go back to this first example. What can the implementation of a blockchain solution do here? Now these are, this is the real world. Bring down the prices of drugs, and at the same time, bring up the quality of the drugs. We can eliminate unfair pricing, because now it's not about volume anymore, it's about the value. And lastly, 30%. 30% survival rate. This is the average in the UK and the US. This shouldn't be double in Russia. Why do we think we can do it? So I'm very happy also to have my CEO here. We both come with a lot of experience in the pharma industry. We have blockchain experience, and also all the different stakeholders are covered in our team. We have doctors, we have pharmaceutical experts, we have providers, and also insurance companies that are represented on our team. And I think one of the most important things, which you've noticed, we're all really dedicated, because this is something where the blockchain can be used to make this world a better place, especially for us, for our kids, for the future, but also for patients today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you for... Thank you. So let's go for the questions. Do you have any questions?
As this is an ICO pitch, you should give us a little bit of information about the ICO.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I made sure there was going to be a question. So we're gearing up for the ICO. The pre-sale will start in May. The hard cap is at 50 million, the soft cap at 20 million, and there will be an overall token supply of 100 million. And our token price will be $1. And then in the ICO with the different discounts at 35 starting in pre-sale, and then moving down from 25, 20, and 15 in mail sale.
And the token model later on?
Yeah. So what we saw is we wanted to make this a utility token. So we want to make sure that our token can be used with our solutions. So in order to gain access to a value-based contract, to code a value-based contract or power up the value-based contract on the smart contract, you will need to pay with tokens, right? So the token has a clear utility. And one of the most special things as well is for the real-world evidence database. So for insights, this can be used by anyone who wants to have health-related information, so they can access this platform also using the tokens.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, Peter, please.
Yeah, so first of all, great presentation, also great presentation skills. You come across very, very credible and competent. That's very important as we all invest in the teams. Just wanted to make it as a general comment. Secondly, I like the model of the patient being rewarded by a medicine that actually works. It brings back the old thought that you pay your doctor as long as you don't get ill, right? And that's really smart. Unfortunately, this is many hundred years back. But if you reintroduce that now, I think that's a great thing. So just want to understand better if the big pharmaceutical companies are not seeing that as a threat. That would be really of interest for me.
Actually, that's a very fair question. Yeah, I can just talk to it, thanks. We get that question often, and for me, being in pharmaceutical for a large, I mean, I can say it, I've worked for Roche for 8 years. They notice that things are changing in this world, right? And at the same time, this question is being asked, a lot of pharmaceutical companies with their medication are being denied access to markets because the cost-benefit analysis for certain medication is just not there. They look at the cost, So healthcare or national bodies would look at the cost and say, well, the cost is here, the value or the benefit that it provides is down here. So what would they rather do? Penetrate the market with a value-based price or not penetrate the market at all, right? And they know that this paradigm shift is happening. So it's really about market access for them, but also understanding how their drug works. This is valuable data that we'll get out of value-based pricing so that they can actually develop drugs that are more targeted towards each patient to understand how they really work in the real-world setting. Clinical trials are not reliable data. So this is, I hope I answered.
All right, we have one more question from Klaus.
Two short questions.
Sure.
The collecting of the data,
Sure.
it's quite, privacy huge. How are you continuing to do that and how fast do you need to do that? And secondly, which markets, healthcare markets are very different from place to place. So which markets are you looking for first?
Okay, yeah. So to your first question, how the data would be collected and some of the mechanisms. So number one is, a lot of times, especially healthcare providers are very reluctant to provide this data in the first place, right? Exactly. But here, what we're dealing with is also national bodies that actually pay for the bill, right? The ones paying for the bill are not the ones giving the treatment, but the ones who are paying the bill make the decision. So if they say, we will have a value-based contract in place, the provider has to provide that data, right? That's the number one thing. Number two was the question around...
Global?
Global, yes, exactly, yeah. So it absolutely is dependent on the national system, right? So for example, this is very interesting. In Russia, this could very well be done. And here it's even special because we would be creating a new market, which means actually, because of the outpatient situation, the patient buys their drugs directly from a pharmacy. So we would be actually not even selling to a national insurance or a local insurance or a private insurance. We would be actually selling to a patient. So, right? So these opportunities are great. But if you'd ask me which markets we would start with, definitely stable markets such as in Switzerland, or also in markets where the need is really high, such as in the UK. You have cancer patients not getting cancer medication and they're dying while they're not getting it. And there the interest of the healthcare bodies and insurances are, well, more the healthcare bodies, is to actually give them the treatment that they need.
Thank you so much, Grisha, for an interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.